I think we're ready, Laura. Are you happy to get started?
Yeah.
Cool. Laura Massaro, world champion, British Open champion, 2 times, and former world #1. When you hear those accolades associated with your name, what are the sort of feelings that come front of mind?
Good question. I guess pride in the sacrifices, the journey, everything around what it took to achieve those titles was worth it. Big part of like proving people wrong as well, which is always nice to achieve things that people don't think that you can achieve or don't have the game to achieve. So yeah, pride, I think.
Did you know, if my research is correct, there's only been 8 females ever to have those 3 accolades by their name. You're the only English, only British, only European female to have ticked off those 3. That must be a real sense of, like, especially because you said there people didn't expect you to do that. There must be a huge amount of just satisfaction from knowing that kind of thing is attached to your name and nobody else's.
Yeah, I think there's a pride which kind of it doesn't feel almost right to say it out loud when you say I'm the only person to have done that from a female from England, because that's what obviously I'm most proud about. I looked up to people like Cassie Jackman my whole career, just wanted to be like her. She was the generation before me. So to think of someone like that kind of not having kind of achieved the same thing it feels a bit crazy, really. I obviously knew there's so few women in general that have achieved the world #1 and world championship titles, because Nicol and Nour have basically spent like 16 years between them there. So you are of a really rare kind of player who's won a world championship, because between them they've got so many. So I think that's kind of obvious, but the British Open was a big one because it had been so many years since an English person had won it, English female had won it. So that was really proud to do that one.
When you look at the 3 titles, is there one that feels more significant than the other? There's always that debate. What's, world #1, world champion? You've had both. When you sort of sit back and reflect on what it was like as a player at the time, is there one that outweighs the other?
I think the world championships pips the other two just because, again, a bit selfishly, but the recognition that you get when you say to anyone who doesn't know squash, anyone who doesn't know me, when you say to somebody, I was a world champion, it does transcend the sport. The same if someone said to me, I'm a world champion, anything, gardener. I'm like, wow, you're the best in the world at what you do. That's unbelievable. Which I know world #1 does. We know in squash that winning a British Open does. But the media that was picked up by that was a big thing. And then the other thing that goes alongside that is holding yourself together that week of a World Championships is something else. And
why? What's different?
I think
it's just another tournament, is it not?
That it is just, well, that's what you try and tell yourself. But what makes it so big is the fact that you are in the process of creating a legacy for yourself. Like I'm doing this interview now because of that match that I played in the final against Nour Sherbini. And I lost 2 finals. The first one I was nowhere near winning. The third one I was super close to winning. To even have one out of 3 finals, I'm super proud of, because the nerves that come along with playing that week and the nerves that come along with holding yourself together in that final is like nothing else that I've experienced. And that goes alongside the 2 British Open finals I played. And I had a match to play. You were the one that told me I had a match to play to become world #1 as well. The individual matches themselves, final British Open final to go to world #1, the matches to go there were nowhere near as bad as the match to win a world championships.
Because of the potential of what might happen?
Because I think you know how big it is. You're about to become a world champion. I can stand alongside some unbelievably big names and say I I was as good as they were at their sport, in my sport. And while world #1, I think you see it in tennis a little bit, world #1 is huge, and I'm really proud that I got there, and I would have been disappointed if I'd maybe not got there. There's so many people in other sports as well, and in squash who maybe have achieved world #1, but didn't win a world championships. Like, to have both is really special. Yeah. So I think the world championship stands out as the hardest one to win and probably my most fulfilling.
Given that there are only a very small percentage of people that have achieved those things, I read a quote, I think I might have listened to it as well, from your coach DP back in the day when you were a junior coming through. And I think his quote was along the lines of, "She moves like an elephant and she'll never be at the top of the game." The fact that you've come from that to then actually achieve what you've achieved, what was the sort of catalyst behind that transformation, so to speak?
Yeah, and he also said if I had £10, I wouldn't put it on Nour to get to the top as well. There were several of famous DP quotes that basically said I was useless. But he ultimately, just to give DP some credit, he was my biggest champion and believer towards the end of my career when obviously I was working with him. I think the main catalyst from going from that elephant on court to becoming a world champion, let's say, was a huge amount of dedication, work ethic. Said it before, like, a big part of getting better in my career was understanding my personality and developing my personality and squeezing the most out of my personality that I could, as opposed to kind of just trying to get better at squash.
What do you break
So-
it down for me?
So
Personality?
working with Danny, obviously my husband, working with Peter, who was my psychologist. We worked a lot on understanding my personality, which was around, we did it mainly with Enneagram space. So once I understood on this very specific personality testing called the Enneagram, what space I was within the Enneagram, I was able to get more out of myself. I understood the reasons I reacted the way that I did to training, wins, losses, people's opinions, good and bad. I understood what was going to pull me down, what was going to stop me training well. I understood what I needed to do to get the most out of myself. And rather than, at first, when we first did it, I remember I was young. I was like maybe 20, 25. I mean, young, I achieved most of those titles that you're talking about, kind of 28, 29, 30. So this is a long process of happening. Once I figured out my personality type, my first comment was, right, well, how do I change that? And I did it with Danny, and he was like, well, you can't, it's your personality. I'm like, no, like, we can change this. I don't like it. I don't like this very specific personality around, basically to give a bit of insight. I'm an Enneagram space 1, which will be quite interesting, I'm sure, for anyone who's done the Enneagram or wants to look at it.
Well, for the uninitiated like myself, what does that mean?
So basically, the name of it is the reformer. I don't know how much that is true. The perfectionist as well. A lot of what I do is about trying to do things the right way. My personality is like, I want to do things. There's quite often a clear right and wrong way. And so before kind of understanding it and realizing it, I would get quite frustrated and stuck if I felt I was doing, as an example, everything well, everything perfectly, everything as a professional squash player should, and then I didn't get the results. It wasn't fair. Like, if I was getting beaten, particularly if someone was beating me and I didn't feel they were doing it the right way, let's say, they weren't training as hard as me, they weren't looking after their nutrition, they weren't exhausting all avenues. Well, hey ho, got news for you, Laura. That's not how life works. Some people are more talented. So I started to kind of.
For you, it would almost feel like you would feel they didn't deserve that because they're not putting in as much work as you, but sort of.
Yes, in a way, but more kind of not less on them. Like they do them, don't they? It was more that's not fair on me.
Right.
So from my perspective, that's not fair because I'm doing everything that I should be doing. I'm doing everything that I could be doing to be the best and I'm not getting the results that I deserve, and that's not fair. Less about like anything personal to them, but kind of started to understand that the more I'm judging other people, the more I'm probably judging myself, the more I'm comparing myself, the less it's really that great for me. And within each number, there's what you call like a healthy average and unhealthy range within that number. So my job was then to be like, okay, I would say that I'm a fairly average one at that time. My job is to try and become a healthy one, where my mindset shifts to, okay, my personality is this. How do we play to my advantage? And that is, I can now understand why I get frustrated when I don't get those results. But I understand that I have an unbelievable capacity to follow instruction, do as I'm told, and basically just dedicate every single day. So when you ask about what was the catalyst from going from the elephant to the world #1, a lot of it was understanding that and then starting to chip away at, okay, this is a talent within itself of that not everybody has, because I've seen that not everybody can follow a training program every single day for months and months and years and just get your head down, work hard and do it. So that was a big part of it, understanding my personality and then being able to put that into actual action in terms of getting better at squash and sticking to it and working hard every single day.
And was there a sort of catalyst behind doing that test or that coming up, or was there a moment where it was like, I need to actually go away and evaluate things here?
Yes, a lot of like heartbreaking losses. The one thing that we actually, Danny and I always said that if I ever wrote a book, there'd be, I don't think there actually is a chapter, but it would be called The Year of the Match Ball, where I had so many losses where I had a match ball and lost them. So kind of trying to look a little bit deeper, not kind of trying to hide away or shy away from hard truths, but to actually shine a light on it. The Peter McNabb, who did a lot of that with me, is an expert in the Enneagram. So obviously that came a lot from him. He's also a neuro-linguistic program trainer. He trained Danny in NLP. I also did kind of a short course, nothing like Danny and Peter, but to understand neuro-linguistic programming and how the mind can understand and change, your perceptions. And yeah, like that actually was one of the first things that helped me beat Nicol for the first time, neuro-linguistic programming and one of those processes. So it was mainly from Peter and it was mainly from Danny. And it was like, okay, once Danny had educated himself around that and understood it, it made sense to kind of speak to me and see if it could help my squash.
This is all going to be around the time as well. I'm guessing here, but this is early to the mid 2000s when the whole sort of sports psychology thing.
Yeah.
It's big now.
Yeah.
All teams, all athletes have psychologists, but it probably wasn't a common thing back then. So was it kind of a bit of a venture into the unknown at the time?
Yeah, and it was fresh and it was new and it was, I've always been someone I really love the phrase kind of our family motto was you get out of life what you put in. I've grown up with that with my family have always been that way. So I think that says a lot about, you have to put in if you want to get anything out. And I always wanted to finish my career leaving no stone unturned. I wanted to basically turn over every single thing that I could. I don't want to be sit here now talking to you wishing I'd done something. And I think when you say about the titles, that's the pride in that. I don't think there's anything more I could have done. People say, oh, you didn't do this, or you could have done more of that, or you could, I've achieved way more than I thought I could and thought I ever deserved. So I'm really grateful.
One of the things I remember a conversation with you probably 2017-ish. So after you kind of achieved those things that we're talking about. And I remember at the time you said that the difference between sort of winning and losing is belief. And I remember at the time thinking, well, surely everybody believes they can win or else you wouldn't be playing. But is that something that ties back to that mental kind of situation? Like, what is that difference when it gets to 1 and 2 and believing? Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean by the belief?
Yeah, it's hard to describe. Belief for me was I genuinely, the conundrum with belief is you don't get belief really truly until you achieve it. So how do you get the belief before you've achieved it? And then that's where you speak to the best in the world and they're like, fake it till you make it. Don't, stay very process orientated. In my case, do an NLP process, which was actually called a belief change process. When I beat Nicol for the first time, I have to put it down to that process. I'd lost 9 times in my senior career. I'm not even talking about juniors because we're the same age. I'd lost 9 times in a row and I did the belief change and I beat her the next time we played. It has to be about belief. And it's just so hard to not have those negative thoughts creep into your head as you get in. They're not negative thoughts, the expectational thoughts of, oh my God, I'm about to win. Oh my God, this is going to be huge. I've never beaten her before. I'm playing amazing. You've lost. You're shaking your hand. So it's really tough. You learn to keep away from thoughts that are unhelpful, and it really is a learning process over the years. So you say to people, don't think about the result, don't think about the ref, don't think about the crowd, don't think about who you're playing, what the score, like it's not that easy. It's a process of a lot of years, of a lot of practice, a lot of understanding yourself, a lot of refocusing, and all of that kind of, just takes years to achieve.
The fact that Danny, your husband, immersed himself in that kind of programming understanding as well. I mean, I was going to sort of bring him up later on, but the fact that he was willing to do that and then you guys worked through that together, that must have been a hell of a support and boost as well for a sort of young player to know that, he's willing to come along, not just sit on the sideline and watch you, but actually like get fully immersed in the whole process as well.
Yeah, it was huge, and I think it's one of the reasons he's so popular and successful with what he does now. He doesn't scream from the rooftops what he's doing. He doesn't need to. It's private and confidential with a lot of players, and I think they like that. He is really knowledgeable, and it's not for everybody because the way that he works is very long-term vision. It's about trying to create a healthy human. Like one of the big things for me with Peter, who obviously trained Danny, one of the biggest things they both constantly said to me throughout my career was, this is about you retiring healthy and mentally healthy, and not being someone who, as you don't hear the stories of people who have just eased into retirement and found it quite good. You hear of the stories of the people who have really struggled in retirement with mental health and struggled without their squash or any sport, or have needed to keep heavily involved in the sport they were part of because their identity is lost. And while that's fine, as long as you can handle it, I wanted my identity to be kind of more than just squash, and I wanted to be okay when I stepped off the court and stepped away from the court. And I feel like that's almost been one of the biggest successful things since I've retired, that I've really enjoyed retirement so far, and it's been nice.
You sort of, the way you talk about yourself, sometimes feel like you viewed Laura Massaro as a product in some ways. Is that a fair sort of like removing yourself emotionally from the sort of the matches, the results? I do this, I'll end up with this. It kind of feels almost product orientated. Is that a fair assessment of the way you went through some of those processes?
Product.
And I think I ask as well because your persona on court was always quite sort of, let's say if Nicol was smiley, you would kind of be the colder, more sort of removed, not necessarily fraternizing with the players in the same sense.
Yeah, when you say product, I sort of think of like, oh, that would mean I was a brand, and then therefore I would be wanting to sell a brand or come across a certain way to appeal to people or not appeal to people. And I don't think that I did that, because if I felt like I was a product, I would have probably been a bit better at doing social media and a bit better at selling myself as that product. So to get more sponsorship, more money, more media traction, and all of that felt quite stressful to me. I didn't really like being I hated it when social media, because I was obviously part of that that generation of social media arriving, where you had to go to the tobacco shop in America and get a phone card and call a landline because your dual band phone didn't work in America. Like, it's so different now. So when it all started to kind of PSA, you'd lose and you'd log on Twitter at the time or Facebook, and it was Massaro crashes out of it. I just hated it. It just felt like I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach again. I'd lost, and then the media, whether that's something that's just unique to me, or whether it because of the not growing up with it, or whether it's just for everybody, not being used to it. I hated it, so I wasn't very good at that side of it. But what I did really want to do on court is have a persona a little bit more, and so I tried as my career went on to have a persona and a personality that players thought of, and that was kind of the Ice Queen. When Joey coined that phrase, the nickname the Ice Queen, that actually allowed me to go even deeper and more into that persona. It almost gave me the go ahead to be even more like that, which it suited my personality. And it's such an amazing, he's so good at them. He captured my personality in that nickname. And so then I just ran with it and became even more icy.
And that was like a conscious decision to compartmentalize Laura at home and Laura in the squash world, and I will be this character when I'm at an event, sort of thing, to make sure that people don't really see the real you.
Yeah, not deliberately, oh, that's me over there, like a fake way, but people even to this day now will be like, oh, you smile a bit more than I thought you did. And I'm like, well, that's not me. That's not who I am on court. What it did was allow me to be laser focused and, icy, which really suited my personality in terms of like focus and determination, and I've got a plan and I'm sticking to it, and you're not going to know if it's love all or 9-all. That was what the persona was all about. And then to kind of not get too close with the players just felt like a natural thing. Danny was traveling with me quite often, had DP as well. I didn't need to go for dinner with the other girls on tour. I didn't need to massively socialize. And so then when you don't know people that well, there's not a lot. It's just chit chat, isn't it? There's not a lot. And I learned a lot of that from Nicol. That was how she was. And then Raneem has said to me when I've spoken to her, like she copied that from me and from Nicol as well. And so before you know it, people are traveling with their teams, and you're just a bit like, do you know what? I'm keeping myself to myself a little bit. And yeah, I'm allowed to then, when you don't know, the biggest fear of like playing Nicol was you had no clue. You had no clue if she was coming off the best training block of her life or if she'd just spent the last 6 weeks in bed ill.
Right.
And it was because none of that kind of like chit chat. You didn't go for dinner with her. You didn't know what was going on. You'd be like, hey, how are you doing in the changing rooms? And kind of all felt a bit weird and awkward, and and that I think she was. She it probably wasn't a deliberate thing from her, but she had, Ronald around, Liz around. She always had 2, 3, 4 people with her. And I just assumed if you want to be like her, you have to be like that.
Right. Yeah. Sort of have that aura
Yeah.
when you walk in a room, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Having said that, I did say the other day that it wasn't particularly pleasant in some ways as well. Like
for you, it being the Ice Queen, or you mean sort of?
Yeah, like I'm fine with the on-court stuff. Obviously, I'm there to win, and that's the main thing. I want to win. I want to perform and do my best. But attending functions was hard. People thinking that that's you, kind of what you give on the court is you away from the court, and trying to really work to fit into sort of like an England team event.
Okay.
Was hard because of the persona that I'd created for myself, which is all my own doing. So I felt like I had to work hard, because it is hugely important when you're playing in a team that you actually want each other to win.
Yeah.
And normally I wasn't that bothered whether the girls I was playing with won or not, because I was, looking after myself. It wasn't that I didn't want them to win, but I wouldn't be sat behind cheering for them. And then you go away from England, and then you need to have that rapport, which is lovely, but then kind of totally different to what I was used to. So yeah, they were some difficult situations there as well.
So were those sort of team events a struggle for you then, in a way?
Yeah, I struggle because the girls had that rapport. So the team events that towards the back end of my career with like Sarah Jane Perry, Vicky Lust, Alison Waters, Jenny, Emma Beddoes were probably the main names. And they all had really, really good relationships with each other. They just clicked.
Yeah.
And it was like hard to kind of not be part of that. So I had to really try and kind of get stuck in, which is not really my personality. And they were great. Like, you can't, considering I barely socialized with them throughout the season, they did everything they could to include me and to do what we could. But it just always felt like I didn't have that kind of rapport with them that they had. So it was hard to build that rapport. And I think it makes it even more proud of like what we achieved as a team, making finals and winning world team finals, winning the Europeans as many times as we did. We all really tried to put everything on PSA aside and come together. And I don't think it was probably easy on either side.
Was there always a little bit at the back of your mind kind of thinking, if I let my guard down here, then it's, I might come unstuck if I'm playing. Let's take SJ as an example.
Yeah.
I don't want to fully open up here because we might play in the semi-final in the PSA event in 6 weeks type of thing.
Yeah, I think you can't think like that. If you are genuinely trying to build rapport and you are genuinely trying to represent England and do your best, you can't be two-faced like that and thinking, well, I'll act like this now, but I'll save a bit for then. I just tried to be myself and perform as well as I could for England and join in with everything that I could, that felt natural to me anyway. I didn't want to obviously. I find socializing quite tiring. I think that's quite normal for a lot of people. So it was like trying to do what was right for me, socializing a bit, and then obviously taking myself off because you're still playing an individual match. And then you just kind of had to click back into that ice queen, let's say, persona when you get back on PSA, and you step on court and you try and be kind of like focused and ready for the plan, and then everything comes quite naturally from there, I think.
That obviously wasn't your persona at the start, though. Your junior career was reasonably successful. I think you were number one at most age groups, and then you go on the pro tour, but it took a long time, I think, before you reached the final, never mind win a title. So what were those early days like before the Ice Queen emerges, before you're the Laura Massaro that we all kind of know now? Like that journey is a long time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of downs.
Yeah.
Not so many ups.
Yeah.
What was keeping you going at that point in time? Because it takes a lot of, you've already said, belief. There's a lot of determination there to, I think at the start you said, sort of prove people wrong. What was it that kept you kind of fired up on that journey?
I think although kind of by today's success in terms of the Egyptians and how young they achieved those big titles, I think even though it wasn't as fast as some of these ones you get today, it was a steady progression that kept me going. So within the first year, I was top 50, quite quickly got to top 20. I stagnated a little bit around the 20 mark, changed coaches around then, jumped up again to like 15, stagnated again. There was always progress. And that's what I think keeps you going. There was always a step up. The coach that I worked with throughout my junior career and early senior career was Ep.10, and she always said to me, winning's a habit and you need to keep winning. So when you come out of the juniors, I'd won national titles at every age group, and I'd learned how to win. And so she was like, she's not going to send me to big platinum events or gold events, even if I could sneak in on ranking just to lose first round. It was, no, you're going to go to a 3 or 4K. You're going to try and get as many rounds under your belt. You're going to keep remembering how to win. And I was only sort of not allowed, that's the wrong word, but sort of only advised to step up the levels of events when I was able to get more than one round in an event, even if it was better for my ranking. Like, I can go to a platinum and get ranking points and my ranking will jump up 10 spots. But what's the point if you're then only going to get in platinums? You're just turning up, flying halfway around the world to lose first round. So I massive big part of that beginning of the career was remembering and knowing how to win, being successful at that level, and then stepping up the ranks and then, going from the slow elephant all the way through was just that constant education. Like I was super lucky that the English Institute of Sport came in right after the Commonwealth Games in Manchester 2002, got an education at like 17. I remember going in. I mean, that's super late now, but 17 was the first time I went in a weights gym and got an education of like how do you clean, how do you squat, how do you deadlift, how do you bench press, all of these really technical lifts with a bar. I remember that first session I walked in, I did not know. You know, you walk into a gym now and it can be a bit kind of intimidating, but back then I walked in, I have a clue, I didn't know how to hold a bar. And then we did like sprint drills, ladder drills, like we were on the track at Manchester. It was all from that legacy of the 2002 Commonwealth Games. And then I think it was just, you know, and then going back to my personality, it was layering all of that, the new advances in training and technology, and just constantly trying to get fit and squeeze everything out of myself, improve my diet, get education around that. And yeah, and then it was just slow wins the race, I guess.
I guess that goes back to what you said earlier about having that discipline to follow a plan as well. If your coaches at the time are saying don't play the big one, play the 3K, play the 5K.
Yeah.
You're the mentality to stick to that and to stick with what you've been told, as opposed to, you know, chasing the goose up here.
Yeah.
Same with the programming, same with the conditioning, with the nutrition. That ability to just follow the plan probably is what made the difference in those years.
I'm in my element when I've got something written down in front of me and you just do it. And working with Mark Campbell was unbelievable for that, because he literally would prescribe my warm up through to my cool down, and it was like, you know, perfect for me. Some people's worst nightmare, and it was like that every day.
Yeah.
And then I'd go to DP and he'd lead the session, and I'd have Jade, a physio, and she would prescribe me something, and it would just be like, well, I know that's going to get done. I know Laura's done her foam rolling. I know she's done her mobility. And, you know, it's what you try and say to other players now, like, just, you know, get good people around you and do what they say. Be humble. They know better than you. You know, you don't know as much. You're young, you're inexperienced. They, you know, they're the experts, follow their lead. And for some reason, it seems quite hard for people to do it. When for me, it's quite simple. And then, you know, maybe I underestimate that it is actually harder than it seems.
Well, around that period of time where you're kind of making the decision to go pro, you're with, you mentioned already, Jenny Duncalf, Alison Waters, probably your two main contemporaries, who were players that you would have been ahead of potentially on the junior side, and then maybe a little bit left behind by at the senior stage. Was that a difficult sort of period of time for you to kind of see them pushing on in the kind of senior ranks when you were maybe not progressing at the same level?
Yeah, Jenny was a brilliant junior. She was ahead of myself and Alison for most of our junior career. Alison and I are more of a similar age, and I was slightly above Alison. And then, as soon as we went on the pro tour, they seemed to just go bang up to top 10 in the world really quickly. And I around that sort of time was stuck at 15, 20, which is still not bad, but, you know, I'm
difficult when you're seeing somebody you're ahead of, and they're ahead of you. Yeah,
I'm comparing myself to them a lot, and they're achieving that, and they got selected for kind of, you know, Commonwealth Games in Melbourne, world teams with like the names that I was talking about before. It was hard, and then particularly before I understood my personality, a lot of comparison of like, why am I not able to kind of push on like they have? What am I doing wrong? What could I do better? And I feel like we were really lucky. I mean, I think that's what goes with having really good junior kind of players in any country. You push each other on. Like I was trying to chase Jenny, Alison was trying to chase me. We all had wins over each other at times. There was people just below, even out, like, you know, Sarah Kipax's, Dominique Lloyd-Walters, you know, all the girls that were coming up behind. Like, you had people who were trying to beat you, and then you had people above you were trying to beat, and there was loads of us. And it's a big thing. It's got to be one of the reasons why Egypt are doing so well now, because there's that competition. So while it was really frustrating at the time, now looking back, I can definitely see that it was a huge blessing, as was like having Nicol in my era at the time. You're a bit annoying. But actually, in hindsight, it's, you know, I wouldn't be the player that I was without the likes of her and pushing the female game on and just trying to kind of close that gap.
Yeah. Well, when you were sort of watching Jenny and Alison push on, is the main feeling at that kind of period in time, jealousy is maybe a bit strong, but just sort of extreme frustration? And do you think it's that partly what was then driving you to sort of remain so focused to trying to improve as well?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely kind of, yeah, frustration is probably the word of, what why haven't I pushed on as quick as them? Um, what can I do, I guess, to achieve what they achieve, and yeah, just wanting to try and close the gap, I guess. I mean, there's loads of, even at that point, I wasn't working with DP, and there's a scenario where I found out that Jenny and Alison were getting more funding than I was, for example, at the time, which they were probably, at the time, they probably deserved it because they were higher ranked, but they were kind of maybe like five in the world, let's say, top five, and I was probably around 10, but I was still number 3. I was still representing England and stuff, 3 in the team, let's say. And the performance director at the time, I sat down and I was like, right, I'm just gonna say, like, why someone had literally left a file open on the England squash desk, and I saw what everybody was getting funding wise, and I saw that I was not on the same bracket. And he just sat down with me. Obviously, it's nothing to do with them, it's nothing to do with us. And he sat down and just went, I just don't think you've got as much potential as they have. And it just hit me like a punch of, it's just like he might as well punch me in the stomach. And I'm like, I'm top 10 in the world. I know they're higher ranked or whatever, but anyway, it turns out that had actually come from DP back before I'd started working with him. And I remember bringing it up when I was working with him. He was like, yeah, I think I probably said that to him at the time, which, he believed. And it was just another, that fueled me so much for so many years. You don't believe I've got enough potential. There's nothing to do and nothing personal to Al and Jen at the time. But when someone says that to you, if you're the personality that I am, I guess, I'm like, no, I'm not having that.
I'm prove you wrong.
And I hung on to that for so long. So many training sessions.
Was that like a reoccurring theme in that kind of, I'm guessing this is from your sort of like 17 to 20 before you do that test. Is that like the recurring theme of people telling me I'm never going to achieve, I'm going to prove them wrong?
Yeah, I think so. A big part of me has always been, it's why I probably struggled to handle the world #1 spot. I always wanted to kind of be the underdog. I kind of wanted to come from behind and show people what I could do when no one expected it. And then when I went to world #1, I was like, oh my God, I've got to win everything now. I mean, that's ridiculous, but that literally was my mindset. And I really struggled to just be like, it's where you have to go be careful what you wish for, because all I ever wanted was to be world #1, and then when I got there I was like, I don't want it anymore. And it took a while and I feel like if I'd have got it back after losing the world championship final to Nour, I lost my world #1 spot, I lost the world title, and she won a car. That was like, I lost a lot in that one match, which was a world championship final. And I feel like if I'd have somehow got it back after that, I'd have handled it better, because I think you do second time round. But yeah, I kind of was like, I don't like this feeling of going into an event and anything less than winning is a failure. I like to be from behind and surprise people and do a bit better than people thought I should.
Okay. Would it not just have been a case if you were always trying to prove people wrong, when you get to #1, is your mindset not just go, I'm going to prove I belong here?
Yeah, like we had a lot of conversations. It wasn't like, oh, I just had those thoughts and didn't do anything about them. I had a lot of chats. I mean, it was, been world #2 for so long to Nicol and then to Raneem, and never went into events thinking, well, I've got to make the final. Obviously, it was just round by round, you do your best. So it was so strange that the mentality flipped to, and for the first few events of being world #1, I was not good. And actually, the world championships where I lost to Nour in that final from 2-0 up, and I wouldn't say I nearly lost first round, wasn't actually close to losing first round, but I was not playing well. And I was 1-1, I think, 1-0 and down in the second to Samantha Turan first round, ready, like thinking this, I mean, that would have been a huge shock. And after that first round match in that world championships, Danny we basically went back to the room and he was like, you're the worst world #1, you're the worst world #1 in history. And we've laughed about it since.
Thank you, supportive husband.
Yeah, well, it's just, I mean, he laughs now because he's like, it's the most ridiculous thing. How can that be a thing? You're the world #1 and you're the worst. Like, it's ridiculous to say. So it was kind of one of those things. But he was right, and there was a lot. I think I don't know if I think I did have a rest day. There was a lot of tears that night, a lot of emotion released. I went on court the next day. I remember it to this day. I was practicing with Joelle. We did a really good 45-minute say hit, and then I stayed on and soloed forever. I figured a few things out on the court. I relaxed, and I played Joshna Chinapa in the round the next day and played as well as I was seeing it like football. Probably one of my, just a random last 16 match where I'm like, that arguably is like one of my best performances ever. So it was a big switch, and then I obviously went on. I beat Raneem in the semi, 13-11 in the fifth. I beat Omnea in the quarters, I think, and then I was 2-0 up to win the world title, and then I would have kept my world #1. So things were like changing, but then Nour was also arriving. She then won her first world championship there in that match against me, and then
was the if I win this, I'm going to stay at #1 thought in your head during that match?
No, no. I feel like a lot of the demons that I spoke about were starting to kind of fade a little bit. I'd had a huge match with Raneem, 13-11 in the fifth the day before, and I was gobsmacked at the start that I made to go 2-0 up against Nour, and she wasn't playing that well. And annoyingly, she had Sherbini in her corner, and I feel like he flipped it for her. I think I've even heard her say that, like, in that match, for some reason, he just, probably a massive amount of respect for him, something he said, relaxed her, she's 2-0 down, and something, I got a little tired from the match with Raneem, and she started to really play well. And then you're doing a lot of work, and, it was still tight, but I lost in 5, and she was arriving, wasn't she, at that point? I'd beaten her in the Worlds just before that, a couple of years before, and managed to so she was still a junior in goggles. So yeah, it was coming, and I like I said, I think if I'd have got it back after that, I'd have been a bit better.
Because that was 2016 when you got to the #1.
Yeah.
In Hong Kong, beating Raneem. You'd won the US Open and you'd won Qatar, I think, just beforehand. And then the results, like you say, when you got to #1, they weren't quite what would have been expected from the year you'd had beforehand. Is that just pressure that you're putting on yourself? It's just, I'm walking onto the court feeling like I can't play freely, I can't move, I can't like cope with it type of thing?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. I didn't like being the one that had the target on my back. So that was an unbelievable run. It was by far the best run of my career, and the run that makes me like feel all warm and fuzzy inside when you think back to like, wow, that the performances at the US Open, and then winning in Qatar, and then backing it up with final in Hong Kong. Almost doing 3 events back to back was crazy. So that was really good. And yeah, I think one of the biggest learnings from that was after losing the World Championships, Danny and I, we were at the airport in Malaysia, and I was obviously gutted. I'd been 2-0 up and lost, and Danny said, right, okay, well, what's the goal now? And I was like, well, what's the end of the season and just World Tour finals to play? And he went, well, let's go and win it. And at that point, it was the biggest prize pot that had been on offer for the women. So yeah, that was a huge motivation actually after losing that World Championship final. It was like, okay, let's go and win there in Dubai.
Which you did.
Yeah, and it was a huge motivation when everybody was at the end of the season, and I was imagining that Nour was kind of, celebrating her first world title. Everyone else was kind of like, wanting a rest. I just got on a mission and trained really hard for the next thing. It was about 2.5 weeks, and then won in Dubai. So it kind of, but there was no points on offer at the time for that, because maybe that would have been enough to take me back to world #1. It was so tight. But yeah, it was nice to kind of really quickly draw a line under that and set a new goal and try and win World Tour finals.
Because I think when I was looking at kind of the journey to #1, the season before, you had a couple of results that, again, if you look back to your record, there's a Windy City sort of first or second round exit to Emma Beddoes, which would have been a sort of disappointing result based on your ranking at the time. in that kind of 6 months before you started that season that got you to number one, the results were on paper quite poor.
Yeah.
So was there something that happened in that period of time which kind of led to that next sort of push forward?
Yeah. Oh, that's good research, that, mate. Yeah, you're right. I I nearly retired, and yeah, I'd been world champion, I'd done British Open, been number two for a long time, kind of behind Nicol. Didn't probably really think I would ever get to world number one, and
Because of sort of just Nicol being there for so long?
and my age, and the fact that I'd achieved everything, and the fact that world number one requires a huge amount of consistency. So I'd obviously beaten Nicol, I'd beaten her in a British Open final, I'd beaten her in some big matches, won big titles, but hadn't been able to do it anywhere near consistently enough to get anywhere near world number one.
Yeah.
Because that's the real struggle of getting a world number one spot. The struggle is the consistency that it requires. That's why it's a totally different challenge to being a world champion.
Yeah.
So I'd had a couple of really poor results.
I think when I look back, there was maybe a second round exit at TOC. There was I'm not sure if it was Pittsburgh or Cleveland or something, and then a second round exit in Chicago. So, but you just said you were almost at the point of hanging up the racket.
There was also a loss in the national championships, like where I was going for, I think it was like a record. I think it is a record still. Like I'm joint top at 4 national titles with Cassie. Maybe Alison has 4 too, but it was to go to 5, which would be a standalone. And I played SJ in the final. And it wasn't that I lost. SJ was coming through and becoming quite good at that point. It was how I lost and how I felt on court, and it felt disastrous at the time. And Danny and I came home, and Danny was like, I think you should retire. And I was like, no, I don't want to retire. And he's like, well, what else is there to achieve? You've had a great career. You kind of, must have been 30, 31 at that point, And I don't know what, we were both like, we were both in a bit of a state, to be honest. It was not going well. And he was supposed to come to Chicago with me. And he said, I'm not coming. And I said, I'm going on my own then. And I think I scraped through the first round against Rachel Arnold. DP was there, so he was going to talk to me between games. I beat Rachel Arnold. I went and had a gin and tonic in Vapiano's and sat on my own. It's just the first time I've ever done that, and I hold DP responsible for that because he said something about it might have been PJ, although I don't want to. Maybe it wasn't PJ. Would be like, go and have a drink, and he used to play really well. So I was like, well, maybe I should try it. I've not tried it so far. I'm on the board. I'm on the verge of retiring. I've just scraped through my first round. So I was like, I'm gonna be good because I've had a gin and tonic, just one. Went back to my room, turned up, felt good, felt better, felt a bit more relaxed, lost to Emma Beddoes in the next round, which, as you say, like Emma was playing well at the time and she was a good player. But it wasn't where I wanted to be in terms of my squash. So the gin and tonic didn't work, so that never happened again. And I flew home. I don't know if I've ever told anybody that. It doesn't matter now, but I flew home, and Danny and I booked basically a holiday to Dubai. And as far as anyone was concerned, I was finished. Yeah, my rackets were away. I was done. I had about, I want to say maybe it was like weirdly, it was like a 5 or 6 week gap maybe between Windy City and the British Open, which was going to be the next event. And as far as I was concerned, and I think Danny too, we were going to Dubai, and the rackets weren't coming back out again. And then I think we'd gone for maybe 10 days, and I cried so much on that holiday. I mean, it wasn't really a holiday, let's be honest. I cried and cried and cried. And I just, slowly but surely, I realised that I was in a fog. And when all this emotion came out, there was a lot of chats, a lot of deep chats Danny and I had. And then the fog started to lift, and I didn't even know I was in a fog. I don't even know what a fog is, but my mind just felt so fuzzy. I didn't know I was in it until it started to lift, and it took about a week. And then we had this chat one day about, well, what if you are going to carry on? What would you be playing for? And I just went, because I want to win. I want to win, and I want to earn some more money, and I want to to try and win as many titles as I can. I'm not done yet. I don't feel like I'm done. And Danny was like, let's do it then. And that was it. And it was one chat. We wrote down a few goals between us. We wrote down a couple of things that we wanted to happen that would help us, like a bit, maybe a little bit of a financial thing that would enable us to have a better life maybe when I retired, what we wanted to do, how I wanted to play the game, what my training would look like, fresh start, like what we're going to do. And yeah, I just got home, filled all the people around me in on, what I wanted, and went for it, and then just went on that run where I trained really hard up to the British, and I think I lost in the final of the British. Yeah, I'd beat Nicol from 2-0 down.
Yep.
And there was some of the best conditions in front of the British crowd, and hearing them roar me on from 2-0 down was something I'll never forget. And then I was a bit tired in the final. Camille was a bit of a bogey player, to be fair, as well. She played great. But considering from where I was and the run I'd had, to make it to a British Open final was really special. So then the rest is history, I guess they say. Like, the retirement thing went away for a little while until it didn't again. But yeah.
Was that sort of a reinvigoration?
I think so, yeah. Just the rest. Danny always, like, he'll still say it today. Like, when you think of a racehorse and they're training, when they're tired, they just put them in the field. And he was like, you just need to go in the field for a couple of weeks. So we went to Dubai, and I think it literally was that, like, just the rest.
Yeah.
The rest was huge. I was more tired than I realized. I was frustrated and lost a little bit, and the rest allowed a bit of a new purpose and a new focus.
Wow. To come back and then 6 months later essentially be at the top of the standings is a hell of a turnaround.
Yeah, I guess well, that was the end of the season, so I had a summer, of course, then at that point. But yeah, to go US Open Qatar was the end of that next year of 2015.
Yeah.
So
was that the season that the tin changed as well?
Yeah, I think so. I won the World Championships. It was a delayed 2013, and it happened in 2014. And then the tin changed the next season after that.
Because I was going to sort of to lead into a little bit of Nicol. You said earlier that Nicol had a big impact on your career.
Yeah.
When you beat her in 2013 at the British Open, I mean, I've watched the sort of final point a few times. You almost look as though you can't believe it.
Yeah.
Even when you're serving match ball and you win, it almost looks like you're going, I've actually just done that. So I had a look at your record, and it was 27-3, I think, going into that match.
Was it? What, including from juniors as well? Wow. Yeah.
So how big a obstacle was she?
Oh, huge. She for such a little kind of in stature, she was just huge in terms of the character, the personality, the physicality. It was huge. And the fact, that belief as well, like, going through juniors, just seeing her kind of take everybody apart for years and years and years. I talk a lot about, like, people don't always think about they talk about Nicol and who she was, but they don't talk about how she put scars on you as a player. She literally gave you mental scars of, like, how hard she made matches. And, a big part of, I went on to, with my own career, to be like, if you're going to beat me, like, beat me, but you're going to remember how hard it is for next time. Right. And that was a big part of it for her. She would beat you. And even if you got close, you would just remember how hard it was and how uncomfortable it was and how painful it was, because she was so physical. So yeah, she was a huge part of, the player that I became. I improved a lot of my mentality. I had a psychologist that I worked with who, I said I've got a belief problem against Nicol, and he came and watched me play a video of a match with her on video, and he said, you haven't got a belief problem, you've got a physical problem. Can't do anything. Basically, can't do anything with your mentality until you match her physically. And that was quite a big eye opener in terms of, wow, like, the psychologist is saying they can't help me because I can't match it physically. So that was interesting. So she really made me become the player I was, for sure. And she was really tough, really, really tough to beat.
And a lot of the tour at that time would have been in Malaysia as well, especially towards like, you know, sort of when you're in your late 20s to 30s, the World Championships in Penang,
For
you know,
her,
for her essentially. So
twice a year,
you're
every year.
going into the Lions Den to take her on at home
Yeah.
every time. That like the sort of, you know, a lot of combat sports, they talk about beating the guy before they get in
Yeah.
the ring type of thing.
Yeah.
It must have felt like that at times for a lot of you and the other players.
Yeah, and then we had events in like Singapore as well, and places where, you know, she was obviously really well known. She's a household name over there. She couldn't walk around without people knowing who she was. It was quite bizarre as a squash player to see that happen. But yeah, the British Open 2013 that you kind of just alluded to was, I'd beaten her, like you said, a couple of times, but it hadn't been anywhere near as big of an event. And I remember the night before the final, it was the one at the Hull Stadium, and it was I think it was Rami and Greg in the men's final, and there was the four of us stood up at the front of the dinner, getting interviewed by Vanessa, and I think I got asked one question. Like, basically, I was surrounded by the big guns. It was Rami, Greg, Nicol,
Who are you?
and Laura was just like making her first British Open final. Honestly, it felt like, and maybe that played a part as well. You know, no, it was honestly like no one thinks Laura's going to win here, and
That probably played into your going to prove you wrong.
Exactly, and I was a bit kind of. On one hand, I was like, they're probably right, meaning, you know, not they're probably right, meaning I probably deserve that. I haven't earned the rite of passage that those three names alongside me have. They were already legends of the game at that point. I wasn't. I was making my first British Open, but it annoyed me that I'm in a British Open final and I've just been treated like the help. So, yeah, that was a good thing to prove me, to try and prove wrong. And then, yeah, Nicol definitely wasn't on form that week. And I think she should have lost before the final. I don't know if she would agree. I think she was carrying an injury, to be honest. And I think that the fear of the other players and her own belief was what even got her to the final. And it was only because I really, truly believed that I could win that I managed to get over the line. I don't know if that's true. I've never asked her. I don't know if she was carrying injury, but you know your opponents and you know when they're at their best. And she wasn't at her best that day. But it was a British Open final and it gave me even more belief, obviously.
That must have been like if you're looking at moments that sort of turn the career around, that must be up there with the best of them for you.
Yeah, because it was the first, as I said, I'd done that belief change process and managed to go and beat her. That was in Cleveland. And then, you know, with all due respect, Cleveland is a very big event. Nicol was obviously in it. Everybody was in a gold event at that level, 16 draw. But it's a totally different, you know, prospect to go and do it in a British Open final when Nicol is really wanting to win it. So,
have you guys ever sat down now that you're both retired and kind of looked back on any of those matches, moments, memories? No,
I don't feel like I really know her.
Is that something you like? Are you curious? You guys have spent so much time on court, you know, opposite each other.
I don't think that she likes me that much. I don't think she would. It's fine. Like, you know, I don't mean that. Maybe I'm wrong. I think I was annoying for her because I did have that ice queen persona and I got stuck in. I genuinely felt like my best chance to win was to get stuck in. Not just physically, but, you know, like physically in terms of, like I said, trying to match her physically with how tough she was. But I had to kind of bring my personality into play when I played her. And I did it with everybody, but it was just harder with her because she was so nice. So I don't know if, you know, obviously I don't know if she thought it was personal or, you know, anything like it. You can't. I guess in a way you can't say it's not personal because I'm trying to beat her.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anything to do with liking or disliking her. But it would be interesting to see how she gets on. I sent her a copy of my book before it came out, and because obviously she features quite a lot in the book, and I wanted her to be aware of it, and I wanted to say what was going into it, and if she had any concerns, I of course would have taken that into consideration before publication, but I don't know if she read it. She got sent it, and I never heard anything back, so I assumed it was fine, or either she didn't read it. Yeah, I know that I just brought my personality into play with a lot of those matches, and it was something that I felt like was my only chance to get into with a chance of winning the matches. So we've never really sat down. I'm rambling now. I'm getting edgy.
Maybe that'll be a special episode. Get the two of you together.
I'd love to. I mean, I wouldn't be against talking to her. If I saw her, it'd be fine. But we just don't know each other at all. It was like no conversation, like nothing, no conversation on tour, literally.
Even though you were playing final after final or semi-final after semi-final.
Yeah, nothing. I don't know anything about her. I've never spent any time with her. I've never been for a single drink or dinner. I spoke to Liz a bit over the years, but again, you're both competitors. You're both trying to win. You both want the ranking, the money, the titles, everything. You're trying to. That's what's so brutal about sport. You're trying to take it away.
You don't want to give anything that can possibly be used against you either.
No, and Liz and her were so close on tour as you are with your coach and stuff. So she always had that, and you were just battling to kind of get them to notice you as a competitor. Like, I'm here and I'm gonna be trying to beat you. So it was hard.
Given that she was like the sort of the main rival, and her style of play very physical, very attritional sort of thing, and then you have, as you've said, Sherbini comes along, Raneem comes along, who are playing a very different type of game.
Yeah,
you're very much in that. Say the lowering of the tin was a bit of a sort of transitional moment, seminal moment for the way the game was played.
Yeah,
you were at the top.
Yeah,
in that mix. What was that like to go through in terms of like having to adapt and change and the sort of transition the Egyptian players kind of brought in?
Yeah, I think I've got two comments to make on that. When Sherbini came about, the one thing that was absolutely apparent to me was what I mentioned before, was she had no scars. So when you talk about them, like whatever you said, it was 27-3 losses to wins in Nicol's favor against me. That's a lot of you're rubbish, you'll never beat me, see you later, not good enough, come back when you're better, rubbish, to then be like, keep getting up, keep getting out, come on, let's try again, let's try a new plan, let's try a new thing. Like, Sherbini didn't have that. Not only was she ridiculously talented, and by the way, she beat Nicol for that first time in Penang World Championships on a high tin at 18. She had no scars, and so therefore, although I'm sure a load of respect, no fear, and you could see it, and she was coming on, and she was making us look a bit stupid, because she was just going, "Why are you rallying with her, Nick? Why are you rallying with her? Drop.
Yeah.
Why are you rallying with her?" And we were like, "Why are we rallying with Nicol?" But we didn't have her skills, obviously. And then even Raneem, when I've spoken to Raneem about it, it was like, it took a joint effort, genuinely, I think, from me and Raneem, and maybe Sherbini a little bit, to kind of start to try and get into Nicol a little bit. And it was only when there was like 2 or 3 of us that were like starting to kind of get the odd wins, maybe put a bit of work into her, do it in a bit of a, not deliberately, not as in any way.
Like the quarterfinal is going to be a lot tougher there for the semi.
Yeah, and then the expectation and the mental side seemed to finally start to come into play with Nicol, whereas it never had before.
Right.
Maybe more self-doubt from her, maybe more expectation, who knows. But yeah, I think that the big thing when Sherbini came on, it was a bit of an eye-opener for us of like, you can't do that to Nicol. Like, you don't do that with Nicol, and she just did it. So it was an eye-opener in that perspective, and it just goes to show, I think, about the scars that she put down on people. And the second thing was the tin, like so that World Championship, the one where I beat Sherbini in the final, was on the high tin, and very quickly we moved. And I remember it being a really big discussion in that it was the 2013, 2014 World Champs. And it was probably going to be one of the last events as a high tin. And I remember Liz saying, I think she said it to one of the PSA guys, if you lower the tin, it'll ruin the women's game because there's only three women that can move on a low tin, or 4 people. And I was 2 in the world and I wasn't one of them. And when they talk about like the funding story about things that really annoyed me and kind of G'd me up, that it was like the tin's going to go low and the women aren't going to be able to move on it, and it'll be Nicol and Raneem, and I think I can't remember. There's a couple of others that she thought, and she. I mean, like fair play. Like if you're Nicol, why would you want anything to change? Of course, she didn't really want the scoring to change from 9 either. I don't think there was a lot of pushback on that. But I just remember thinking that's really unfair because I'm world number 2 and I've beaten probably one of the only people to be beaten Nicol, and that's a bit harsh. That maybe she was right. I mean, DP thought I was an elephant, so why would she not? But I remember it being a really big motivation after that World Championships to be like, okay, my big focus here is not on how we attack the tin that's going to go lower. It's how we defend it. And I'm a big believer in like the women's game is a huge part about defense and not just about attack. And my drop shots were going to improve on the low tin because I now had 2 inches lower to hit with. But how was I going to defend Raneem hitting 2 inches lower on the tin? How was I going to be able to get up? Because effectively it makes the court longer, right? So how am I going to cover that extra meter at the front of the court and defend and do that as well as I can? And so it was just, again, like trying to prove a point of, I'm gonna be someone who can move on a low tin, and I'm not gonna be this. I'm not gonna let the low tin be kind of the undoing of my game. And so super proud of the transition of seeing it all in terms of going from 9 to 11, going from low tin, and seeing so many generations in sort of starting with like your Cassies and your Fitzies and those sort of names, right through to kind of still being on tour when Sherbini and Gohar and playing Hania a couple of times, which is really weird. Kind of been through so many generations, which is cool.
What do you make of the sort of the actual state of the women's game as it stands right now? Because it looks to the outsider looking in that it's more competitive than it's been probably ever.
Yeah. I think if I'm honest, technically like as you go down the rankings, it kind of doesn't maybe seem quite as technically solid as it used to. Maybe that used to be the fact that the rallies were a little bit slower and people used to work. There was like a huge period of our time where we did so much technical analysis, but it's so much faster and so much more competitive. The girls, the women are so much more, so much fitter, physically faster. I mean, they've had all like if you're training a junior now, like obviously as a coach, I'm trying to be like, okay, you've got to be training smarter and harder earlier because now I have the sports science to back that up. And if you're not, then there's people that are just gonna kind of, you can't train the way that I trained now. You have more sports science and physio to back it up, and you have to be training harder and smarter than the generations before. So for sure, like it's in the fact that Gohar and Sherbini particularly have been able to transition kind of like out of, let's say, my era with Raneem and Nicol and still be at the top of the game in this era with kind of like your Orphies and your Hanias. And it is, I think I said that when I was commentating in Qatar to Sherbini, I'm like, how are you playing with these girls when you were like our era? And she's like, it's just hard work, and it's now less about the tactic and more about the physicality and stuff like that. So that was really interesting to hear. But as you go down the rankings, I just sometimes think like from an England perspective, we were so on the technical stuff, so kind of in the analysis. We had analysts, we had people kind of on the super slow-mo cameras, and I feel like that art has maybe been lost a little bit.
Do you think that was too much analysis to the detriment of players, or that actually there needs to be more of that stuff again?
I think it's a bit of a lost art. The stuff that I used to work on with DP was so much around like slow rhythm, technical underpinning. Can you do something slowly? Therefore, you can do it fast. Understanding your swing, understanding your technique, being able to fix it in the moment, stuff like that is so important, I think, at the top of the game, at all levels of the game, actually. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see a little bit more of that come back in, particularly lower down. I think the top girls are all over it. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They know what the swings are doing. They wouldn't be at the top if they didn't. But, you know, if people wanting to look at, you know, closing the gaps a little bit, it seems to just be about, oh, well, I'll just get fitter and I'll just get stronger and I'll hit the ball harder and I'll get up the rankings. And I think that probably maybe people need to look a little bit more at the nuances again.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting kind of doing my own podcast, listening to some of the coaches that we've had interview on about, just been, you know, whether or not some of those subtleties have kind of been lost a little bit. And I think as everything does, it goes a bit full circle, doesn't it?
Course.
So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if it comes back a bit.
Do you find that obviously coaching is something you're doing now? Just before that, I want to go back to when you actually decided to hang up the racket. You said 2015 you were close to doing it.
Yeah.
From there you come back to get to world #1. But then in 2019?
Yeah.
You did hang up the racket.
Yeah.
But you were still top 10.
Yeah.
You'd still made a few quarters and a few semis in the kind of season leading up to it.
Yeah.
What was it that made you decide at that point in time that actually I've had enough, I'm ready to step away from the game?
It was a really tough decision, and I feel like part of me wonders whether or not I actually should have retired the season before. But the season before had actually not been that bad. Like, I'd won the British Open in 2017, and that was obviously, so then to have retired, I had another season which was okay, obviously still playing well. If you're winning a British Open, 2018 was some good and some bad results, and so I'm not sure if I should have retired then. But then when I did retire, I knew it was absolutely the right time, because it wasn't just the fact that the results were coming a little bit worse. It was more the performances in that were not what I wanted. I was obviously having a few bad losses by my standards, but it was more about performing really well one day and then just being horrendous the next and having no answer as to why. And I don't know if that is something that comes with age. I slowed up a little bit as well. Balls that I just would get back, I wasn't getting back. And I would play unbelievably one day and then wake up and play horrendous the next. And it was just something that I'd not
experienced before.
Yeah. And I think it was maybe a mental thing, maybe slowing down a little bit, physical thing as well. And then ultimately, you know, everybody has the reasons why they're playing. I think it's sometimes a bit different for females as well. Obviously, I've always wanted to start a family. I wasn't really someone who wanted to come back after having a baby. So it was more about, okay, why am I carrying on playing? And Danny was quite wise, and he's like, you know, even if I talked about I might just want to win one more world title or one more British, and he'd be like, why? Why does having two world championships better than one? Why is having three British Opens better than two? Like, don't be greedy, kind of, you know, not greedy, but everybody's entitled to kind of why they play the game. And he was right, really. As I said at the very beginning, I achieved more than I ever thought I would and thought I deserved to. Why am I trying to push for more when the time's right? And then ultimately, I think when those performances started to happen, the losses that were becoming more regularly, it started to really dawn on me that these titles were not just going to happen. Like, the weeks were just not going to come together the way that they had. And I was just not prepared to put myself in draws anymore if I wasn't in contention for winning the titles. And that was the final decision. And a couple of bad losses, world champs to Hania El. Again, not particularly the loss to Annie. I'd lost to her before. She was a brilliant and really tricky player. It was how I lost. I just couldn't find an answer, and I wasn't used to that. I'd always been able to figure it out. And then finishing my career with losing to Tina again, who wasn't kind of the Tina now. She was just kind of breaking through a little bit. Was like, okay, that's kind of a disappointing end, but it really made me think, yeah, it's the right time. Yeah.
From that, was coaching always something you had kind of then thought about? Because there's a lot of players that, you know, have no interest in kind of getting into the coaching side of things, and some that know from a very early stage that they want to. you were sort of more of a mentor, I guess, to some players,
Yeah.
Millie Tomlinson's, Lucy Turmel's, etc. You did a bit of mentoring with
Yeah.
towards the end of your career, but was the coaching side of thing one that you kind of naturally gravitated into?
I think so. I don't remember thinking I want to be a coach, but I definitely done a little bit of coaching towards the end of my career, as you say, more mentoring a little bit. I felt like I had something to give back. I didn't really have I didn't know what I was going to do when I finished, and I was volunteering at a charity for a while and waiting on tables and doing some you know, you'd go in for like a 4-hour shift and you'd do an hour on tills, hour on pot wash, hour on taking orders. And I was like, I did a bit of that. And then I tried to enjoy the retirement a bit. And then slowly but surely, people started, America was always maybe on the table, although Danny's not really ever been keen for that. So it was just sort of like enjoy the retirement, see what happens. And then before I'd even retired, Joelle asked me to coach her. So I announced my retirement in Manchester. If you remember, you did the video with me and stuff. And I announced it at Manchester, just before Manchester. And I played Manchester and British Open and I was done. And in Manchester, she was like, can I have a coffee or can we have a chat? And will you work with me when you retire? Like, she was obviously top 5 in the world at the time and playing really well. So that was like, okay, well, I'm maybe straight into coaching. If it was more like, let me have a think about it. I don't really know what my future looks like, but it was quite exciting to be approached by Joelle at that level. And I think we worked great together until she just started struggling with her body in the last couple of years, really. So that was great. I worked with Julianne Cortese quite a lot and a few girls lower down, did a bit with England. Obviously had a baby. So you just released my book, which was all sort of stuff. And then I got approached by Head as well to carry on. So I'd been with Head for 8 years of my career. And when I retired, they asked me if I'd like to stay on as a consultant. So that was kind of exciting too. It meant that I was going to stay involved in the game, and I'm kind of proud of the stuff that I've done within Head as well, and how I've helped them develop the squash side with Lincoln and with the pros. So yeah, I think it's just been kind of an ongoing process, really, of like one thing's followed another, and I've kind of found myself coaching now. And I think when people see people improving and the coach is passionate about helping, and I'm always trying to develop my coaching and always trying to find new things. And I think the one thing as a player I always felt was that it's always the coach's job to kind of be like, we've got an answer, let's go for it. And I love doing that. I love seeing things and helping people and looking at the fine details of everything. So yeah, hopefully that can carry on.
What was it like whenever Hania approached you? Obviously, somebody you said earlier, you played against young Egyptian, different culture,
Yeah.
different background. I
Yeah.
don't know if you knew her at all as a player, but to be approached by one of the best talents in the game to get you on board. But from the outside, it looks like very different characters, temperaments, personalities. It might be a lot of similarities that maybe we don't necessarily see as the view in public. But what
No,
was
we are so different. It was great. Like, actually, like, obviously I played her twice back to back Hong Kong first rounds, back to back years, right before I retired. I think it might have been it was either 2016 2017 or 2017 2018, two back to back years. She didn't nearly beat me, but I was like some young Egyptian junior first round, 1 in 5. Turned up the next year, was like, oh God, I've got the same young Egyptian again. I managed to play a lot better and kind of was a bit more prepared. I managed to win in 3. So I think, yeah, like, that was obviously really good that we got a chance to play. She was so young. She was still a junior. And then I was commentating in Paris, and she'd had a tough loss, I think, to Sabrina Sobey. And I'd watched some of the match and thought, oh, that does whatever she's done there doesn't look great. Like, it was the first event after summer, but I had no relationship with her. I didn't know anything. I just remember seeing the match going, something has changed there. So she asked to meet for a coffee, and we sat down, and I just said, I told her what I saw in the match, and asked her if I was right and what she was trying to do, and she said yeah, and we talked about that a little bit, and then I talked about how I see the game, and how, like, technically how I like to work and how, you know, different things maybe could add to her game. And I'd always thought, she was a lot younger, I didn't know, but I watched her progress, and I often thought maybe when Joelle retires, because obviously I thought they're so close in ranking, that's probably not going to work together. She could be someone potentially maybe who might have an interest, because I felt like she suited the way that I coach.
Right. Okay.
She throws the leg a lot. She has a lot of DPs. Hytham Efat, who coached her as very young, has always said that DP was kind of one of his people he looked to in coaching. So I felt like
there's some sort of synergy.
Yeah, a little bit. So yeah, and it's come to fruition a little bit in that way. She gets a lot of what I said. A lot of how I teach works with the style of movement she is and the athlete that she is. And then it's just been a process with getting her to understand things, really. But yeah, mentally, I said this to Connor when he came over about her World No.1 interview. I was like, she's way more feisty than me, and he almost spat his coffee out. More feisty than you. I'm like, oh yeah, more that personality of just, yeah, doesn't, you know, in a totally different way to me and how she goes about it, but she's no nonsense.
Yeah.
And I really like that, obviously, and it's a similarity, but kind of very kind of like single-minded tunnel vision, which I really like.
Yeah.
Doesn't maybe care as much about what people think
about,
as I feel like I maybe used to do a little bit. So I think I'm hoping that's going to serve her well in terms of handling the pressure of World No.1. And I think she spoke about it to you a little bit about having Kareem Darwish there day in, day out with the experience he has, particularly of being World No.1 for such a long time. And then me, who didn't spend very long there. She's got the perfect partnership.
Is there a little bit of excitement with that? You know, we opened this up, world champion, British Open, World No.1. Hania's got 2 of those. She's obviously chasing the 3rd one. Is there a little bit of excitement of potentially being, you know, on the other side of the glass wall, working with somebody who's trying to achieve that as well?
Yeah. I mean, she's obviously world number 3 when she came to me. So she's by no means like someone who I've brought through from a junior, but the way that her game has developed and her attitude and her mentality and the shots that she's playing, and particularly her movement as well, like just tried to really help her with that side of things, which is ridiculous considering how good of a mover she is. I think that's
DP would be surprised, perhaps.
Surprised
that the elephant is helping Hania improve her movement.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. Well, she's anything but an elephant, isn't she? She's probably never been called an elephant in her life. But yeah, I mean, it's so exciting, and I think that obviously it's a huge amount of pride. I think the one thing as a coach that I really want to remember, or like as a former player, a former player that kind of achieved what I did, what you said at the start. The coach plays a huge role, but it's not the coach, it's the player. And I think having been a player, I understand that more than anything. I'm not overly bothered about trying to publicize too much about our work together. She's already great. She was already great when she came to me. She's better now. I've helped. I have given that information. I said this, I think in an interview before. I've given information of a very similar level to other players, and it doesn't work. It's not. The coach is definitely about sharpening the knives and adding skills and tools to a player. Mm-hmm. But if the player is not ready to receive or doesn't know how to receive, or of the personality, it doesn't matter how good the coach is.
Yeah.
The coach can help people get better. Of course, I can help someone go from 100 to 80 or 80 to 60 or 60 to 20, hopefully, maybe, I don't know. But to make that difference, and I think that shows with every coach there's ever been, right? Like DP's had world champion after world champion. He's had a load of people that it just hasn't worked with. Malcolm Wilstrop is the same. All of the great coaches have had huge successes and also a ton of not successes either. It really comes down to the player and their personality, and she's special in that regard, as all world No.1 and, you know, amazing players are, I think.
Do you think is there a little bit I don't know, it seems prevalent in the last few years, whether there seems to be a lot of players moving coaches quite quickly, like looking for a quick win, so to speak, and then moving on. Is there something to be said about sticking with something for a longer period of time and kind of trusting the process, to go back to, you know, your kind of follow the program type of belief?
I think it very much depends on the situation. Like is too much of a generic question, let's say, to answer. Like if I just take my own career, for example, one of the things that I'm probably most proud about in terms of that no stone unturned was, okay, let's not talk about jumping ship too early, but if this isn't working, there has to be a change.
Okay, yeah.
So, you know, you can flip the question in that, has there been too many players that have stuck with the same coach for too long just out of loyalty when it's clearly not working? And that to me seems utterly bizarre.
Yeah.
So I think it comes down to the personality of the player, and if that player is wanting to be the absolute best, and your vision is whether, yes, I want to win titles, yes, it's about the ranking, but ultimately, is my squash getting better? Am I playing better? Or am I losing to the same people over and over again? Am I losing to the same opponents in the same round? Am I developing my game? Like, so for Hania, like hers was almost a bit up and down, wasn't it? She'd had huge successes and then huge downs, and she was struggling a bit more with consistency. For myself, for example, it was a huge leap of faith. Like, I'd been with a number of I'd been with Annette Pillin, and then Danny had helped me for quite a while on the squash side, and then a guy local to here, Nigel Willis, had helped me, Nick Taylor.
Okay.
Kind of all gone, again, very short periods of time, all added something to my game, which is invaluable. And then eventually settled kind of with Phil Whitlock for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I beat Nicol for the first time under his guidance. I think, got to 3 in the world. Something in me was like, I'm playing great. I'm 3 in the world. I'm not going to get to world #1. I just felt it. I just didn't have the tools that was required to get there. So it then becomes a bit of what I guess the question is, you're asking, are people moving too much or too early? It depends why you're moving.
Yeah.
And if it's a real thoughtful process of, I would prefer to drop to 8, and this is a genuine conversation I had to myself, I would prefer to drop to 8 in the world and know I tried than stay at 3 and end my career like this. And then it sort of linked really well with DP had lost had kind of separated with England. He was doing a little bit more individual coaching, and he was at events a little bit more. He sparked an interest of something that I hadn't had in my career, and he'd watched a match at the US Open against Raneem, where I'd lost, and he sort of looked across to Danny, and Danny says he sort of gave him a look that was like, if you want that to continue, then carry on, sort of thing. And that for me was just like, at the age I was, it was like, no, I'm going to go and I'm going to try, and it's a leap of faith. And so there's people who jump about a bit quick, but if you give it a couple of years, that's enough to know whether or not it's good. And I'm like so grateful for all the coaches, Phil included. I still go back to the stuff I learned, but DP kind of put the cherry on the top of the cake for me, really. And without that leap of faith and Danny's encouragement and that openness to, is there more that I can become with my game, I never would have achieved what I've achieved. I genuinely believe that. So it was worth the risk, absolutely.
Has to be a synergy between the coach and the player, I guess.
Yeah.
From both sides.
Yeah.
You're not just coaching at the pro level, though. You're doing a bit, I think, at the amateur level as well.
Yeah.
How does that balance work? It's got to be really different from that, getting on court with Hania El Hammamy and getting on court with Johnny from League 6.
Yeah. Some of my biggest achievements have been at improving someone's squash levels from 500 to 1,000 or whatever that may be. You get some really keen amateurs, and in all honesty, I feel like if you can help someone at amateur level get better, getting the pros better is easier.
Okay.
Because if you can get a message across and a technical change across to someone who isn't living, breathing, and dedicating to squash every day, and they can get better, then getting the pros a bit better is easier. Like I've learned so much coaching the amateurs about how to get information across, how to demo, how to change my language. And I drop Leo off at nursery, and I'm normally at just 2 days a week is at nursery. So I normally get a couple of days a week where I can just coach a few of the guys at the club, which is really nice. I really enjoy it. I've got a few juniors that come over as well, like playing nationally, which is really exciting. And then a few people from abroad and pros. So really, really great kind of dynamic going on at every level, which I really enjoy.
Earlier on, you touched on Cassie and Lisa Opes, the likes of those players that were around when you were coming through. To be able to give back now, especially in an era of kind of, you said about social media and that sort of thing, and squash isn't as popular as it was 30 years ago. The opportunities to get into the game maybe aren't the same. I know you've been a supporter of sort of the Girls in Motion program in the Northwest. To see those kind of initiatives coming through and programs coming up to get girls into the game, how important is it as part of your giving back that you see being involved in that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, for girls, I think, and females in sport in general, what's hugely important is that they have female role models, isn't it, and female coaches. And the one thing that I loved about being part of the Girls in Motion was all of the coaches were female, obviously, and all of them were really young. And so it's for even to be able to help kind of be around other coaches who are trying to make their way in the game. And, there's a couple of female coaches around the area who are coaching at clubs and are coming for lessons with like myself or Danny to actually develop their own coaching, to get some ideas and things like that. So just, as a coach, just having that mentality of being able to deliver really good lessons and improve your own game. That was a big thing with Danny used to say about playing leagues and stuff, is like, you need to have empathy with the game and how hard it is. It's such a tough physical sport that if you're a coach, female or male, and you want to develop your game, you have to try and learn and try and develop your coaching and understand the game yourself. So to see those girls in Girls in Motion and the women coaches that were there was something really special, because I think that women just behave a bit differently together around other women and you're just more at ease. So it's invaluable from that side.
Was that kind of thing around whenever you were coming through in your early days in the game, or was it, were there kind of, you obviously have come through and played at the top level, but the kind of, opportunities to be around girls of the same age and just be around girls, did that exist when you were a teenager?
Just at national squads, really. There was obviously more girls playing. We were at national squads and we would have like weekend squads, say at Lillishall, which were hugely different because you would really be kind of away for the weekend rather than in a hotel. You were in, kind of on the Lillishall campus with the squash courts, the gym, dinner, hotel, all on site. So that was a really unique situation.
But that would only be if you were in that like top 5 or 6 of the country sort of thing.
Yeah. The only other thing, well, I say the only other thing, but the thing that was hugely important for me was playing women's league, which I know Sally and Girls in Motion is hugely trying to develop that league and get that female league going again, because I was surrounded by not particularly girls my own age, but women. My mum, it was one of the first steps of independence where my mum or dad would drop me at the squash club and we would go off to an away match and I would have to do my homework. They would help me. You have to sort of like support other women, the chit chat in the car, all getting showered after, getting changed, all of those things that kind of happen and help you develop as a girl into a woman. And just having people around that, but without even knowing it, I was just looking up to them and learning from them, and it was a huge part of my development. And those women were a big part of my education on and off court, and I love those memories of going away, getting back late at night, getting dropped off at home and up for school the next morning. And they're like really fond memories that I have that were given to me from squash and from those women who were prepared to kind of give up their nights and do it.
Yeah. Which is something that sort of currently doesn't exist for young girls sort of coming through at the minute.
Yeah, there's a league over the years. Like there was a Cheshire League and a Lancashire League, obviously just in my area in the Northwest, and they're trying to, I think over the years it's just really whittled down, and the teams are a lot less, the players are a lot less. But with the Girls in Motion, that kind of momentum that you can get of a lot of young girls playing and a lot of clubs getting back involved into the system, they're hoping to just rejuvenate the league a little bit and get that competitive side going, where you've got a group of 4 or 5 women and girls that are going to away matches and home matches and things like that. So it is invaluable that people like Sally and everyone involved at Girls in Motion are kind of trying to get all of that going again and make it important for girls.
It sounds like there's still very much a love for the game. You know, it's you see it sometimes with people that get to the top and achieve and have that elite level experience, that sometimes when they do step away, the lack of limelight, the lack of, you know, the accolades can really sort of sour maybe the experience of the sport. But it doesn't seem like that has happened with you. It seems like there's a genuine love for the sport still very much burning.
Yeah, I think it's that constant. The thing that I've taken from my playing career into my coaching is I want to try and improve every day. I want to ask questions. I want to learn from other coaches. I'm a better coach now than I was when I retired. I'm a young coach still. What I have in experience from playing is what money can't buy that, obviously, but that doesn't always mean you're a good coach. So I have to have my humble hat on. I have to be watching the game. I have to learn. I have to speak to people. I have to ask questions, just the exact way that you were when you were a player. If you think you know it all and there's only one way to play the game, then you're going to come unstuck. So the more inquisitive you can be, the more childlike you can be, the more just excited about the game and the new things that you're seeing within the game, then the better you are as a coach, as a fan, as, you know, all the different areas of the game. It keeps it interesting for sure. So my relationship with the game is good. It's a tough retirement because it is a small sport. You go from being quite a big name in, you know, a small sport, but then you go to a small sport to not, you know, you're around Hania and everyone's asking for her autographs and no one really cares anymore. So there's an adaptation for sure that has to happen. But, you know, I as a coach, like I said before, it's about the player now. That's their career is what's most important. I took so much from the game and so much from the people around me. You really have to be so selfish. And I sort of see it as my time to try and give back to the game that's given me so much. It's given me the lifestyle I have now. It's given me the development as a person. I'm, you know, away from the squash game. So it's you can't just continue to take your whole life. So the more you can think about giving back and learning, and it's my time now to give to Hania and, you know, the people that I've given to, like all of my career and coaching, hopefully that you pay it forward. And I think part of it is like I got so much from the likes of Sarah Fitzgerald, like hitting with me when I was so young, from DP, from all of the coaches that have given me their time. Yeah, you pay for it, but that's not about coaching. They give so much. So yeah, just it's my turn to pay that forward now. Do my bit for the game, and then hopefully people pay it forward again in the future, and that would be a really nice way to think about it.
Laura, it is amazing to hear the passion for the game still coming through, even after everything you've achieved and the journey that you've been on. From the coaching side of things, wish you all the best working with Hania and any other players in the forthcoming sort of few years, and hopefully you keep smacking the ball around at David Lloyd for a few more years yet.
Hopefully. Thanks.
Awesome.